So yeah, today we're going to have some fun looking at a little bit of an intro to the dev environment and everything around what building on Cudos and building within the Cosmos is about. Yeah, so sorry for the delay there as well. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go along. So we'll be reading there as well. For any who have any questions from that side. But yeah, from my side, for those of you who don't know from last time, I am Ollie. I am on the developer relations team here at Cudos. And yeah, welcome to the Cudos blockchain development program with Showcode. I know some of you are joining for the first time, but this session will be recorded as well, same as the last session was too, so you can always watch those back later. But yeah, so today I've also got two of our ambassadors here, our developer rangers. So I mentioned Antrix and Aisha. They're going to be showing some of the useful things to know about setting up a dev environment with Cudos. But yeah, so from my side, some interesting things to also get you going. So we did in the last session share some dev resources with you. So I will get that to you again right now. So let's just get that to you. So this is a link that contains some useful information for when you want to get going building on Cudos. And so yeah, that has some good starting points there. But some of the other stuff from where we left off yesterday, some of the good things that you will also find a lot of utility in is around Rust. So I did mention and I did show the Rust programming language book last time. It's a great book, but it is available in digital copy as well. There is a link to that through the dev resources link that I've also, that link tree that I put into the chat. So feel free to head there for some of the content around that. That also, I would definitely suggest at least having a read of the first 4 chapters and having a little bit of a tinker with some of the code in those chapters as well. There's some useful stuff there, and it'll show you what's a little bit different between any of the languages you've been using so far and how Rust is different to those. But yeah, so I'm also going to cover some more stuff at the end of this session as well. But for now, we're going to hand over to Aisha, who is going to show you the developer environment setup for building on Cudos. She's going to show you how to build using the Cudos Blast development tool. Importantly here, Cudos Blast is currently only working for those who aren't using ARM devices. So if you are on an M1 Mac, then you keep watching, and Antrix is going to show you the old school way of doing things as well, which some developers may find also interesting and a different direction there. So yeah, I believe he has actually managed to get it Cudos Blast working on M1 Mac as well. But I do know there are some finicky things there, so which we're working out. But basically, we're going to show you 2 different cool ways of building with Cudos. But Aisha's going to start with that now. So thank you so much, Aisha. So you can take it from here. I might try and figure out my camera so long. I can't yet hear you, Aisha.
My screen now.
There we go. I can hear you. I can see your screen as well.
Right. So to get started, I would like to mention that we have, so I'm on a Windows system. So I'm going to use WSL. So we have the same environment. So whether you're on Mac or you're using a Linux environment, that would ensure that we are all using the same environment. And it's it's advised that you use WSL for, if you're on Windows, it's advised that you use WSL so that everybody is using the same system. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to install JQ. So there are two steps to this. The first is to install JQ, set up our environment, installing JQ and call so that we can install Rust. After installing Rust, we're now going to set up the Cudos specific environment. So first, let me install JQ and call. So install. And if you're on Windows, there's a link to WSL is the Windows subsystem for Linux, and there's a link that we can share showing you where you can download and how the steps involved in downloading and installing WSL. So the next thing is now to install Rust, and the instructions you can follow to install Rust can be found here. Let me open another window. So if you follow this link, it's going to show you the different steps or the different instructions. So since I'm on WSL, I'm going to follow this instruction. Right. The next thing would be, so since this is installing, let me move on to the next part. Let me talk about the next part. So the next part would be, but I can't. So since this is installing, let me install Node, the NVM. And I'm doing this because so as we, to conserve time and ensure that we maximize our time. So I'm going to install NVM on one side since my Rust is installing. So I want to check the link to that, right?
Hello.
Okay, so now I've installed NVM, and if you're on WSL, it's important that you go for NVM. Why we are installing NVM is for our Cudos Blast, and for some other things, we would need to use Node. And to avoid permission issues, if you're on WSL, it's advisable that you install the Node version manager. So I've done that. Just to check if I have it installed, I'm going to run command NVM to see if the command is available on our system. Okay, let me do that on another, I guess, let me open another terminal and do that. Let me check if I can do that from the other. No, I can't. NVM. All right, so it's installed NVM. Okay, Rust is still installing, so it's a good decision to install NVM first. So I want to check if you have. So now I want to install the long time support for Node. So I run nvm install LTS. So this is like an alias for the long time support version of Node, the latest version that has long time support for Node. So that's getting downloaded. Let me check. This is taking a lot of time. Okay. I think my network is very slow today, so maybe that's why. But we're getting there. All right, so so that we utilize our time, let me explain the different tools that we can use when building smart contracts on the Cudos blockchain. So the first one, we need to understand that Cudos is a Cosmos SDK based blockchain, and with that, we all Cosmos based blockchain that run smart contracts do so using CosmWasm, so Cosmos WebAssembly. So CosmWasm is the tool.
And we are live again. Sorry for the technical issues all, but we're back. Sorry for the interruption there as well, Aisha. Yeah, so I think this is all being streamed to YouTube as well, so we can clip things together after the fact. But yeah, if you want to just carry on with the environment setup, but maybe we can just start from the point of the Cudos specific environment. We will also share the rest of the environment setup for any who need it. It's available through the Cudos docs, so you can follow along there. And as always, you can always ask in any of either the show code or the Cudos Discord channel if you need any assistance along the setup, if you're doing this after the fact or if you're watching the video. But yeah, so thanks, Aisha. If you want to take it away from there, if you get a moment there. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Oli. So I'm going to resume where I stopped, and that would be me sharing. I'm going to resume where I stopped. So let me share my screen. All right. Because this is taking some time, so I think the best thing we would do is to use another environment that has Rust installed. So, and we're going to focus on Cudos specific installations. So for now, I'm going to interrupt all of this. And because I have other distros on my system, I'm going to go to that. So after you've installed Rust and some other JQ Core, Rust, and NVM, so we have all of those installed. The next thing we need to do is install Docker. And that's one of the prerequisites for using Cudos Blast. So I'm going to install, I already have Docker installed as well. But if you check the Cudos Blast, let me go to the website. If you go to the Cudos Blast GitHub repository, there is a very detailed explanation and links to what you need to install and how you do that. So let me check. Yeah, this is the GitHub URL. If you go to the page, you would see the instructions. So you shouldn't be, there's no worries. Everything we've left, you can find the instructions. And as Oli said, you can come and talk to us if you face any issues. So CD, I'm going to go to my development. So I think it's important. I said earlier that there are two different ways or approaches to developing smart contracts on Kudos. And I think that's where we got cut off. So the first approach is you develop with Cudos Blast. Cudos Blast abstracts some things away. So if you don't use Cudos Blast, the other way is like other CosmWasm smart contracts. You follow the general CosmWasm approach. And you need to have your node installed. So you can, and that other approach, my friend is going to talk more about that. And I'm going to talk about the Cudos Blast approach, especially for people running Linux, if it's on WSL or any Linux distro. But for people, and as well as Mac, unless you're using M1, that's when you can run into issues. And I would advise you follow the second approach that Yom is going to talk more about. So now let's focus on Cudos Blast. So to install Cudos Blast, you're going to run the command after installing your node and npm or nvm, and you're going to download docker ng docker compose. There are links for that. So the command you run is npm install Cudos Blast globally. You install it globally. I already installed Cudos Blast here. So I'm going to now focus on, after installing Cudos Blast, we're going to create a Cudos project. So the first thing to do is we're going to create our directory. So I'm going to make a directory called, let's say, Cudos test. So I'm going to go into the directory and run blast in it. Okay. I need to use my NVM use table. I'm telling NVM to use my the stable version of Node that I already have installed. So I'm going to run blast init. So this is going to initialize a blast project. And after initializing a blast project, apart from this first command, please note that all blast commands are to be run in a blast directory. So you can only run all this the following commands, like blast compile, blast run scripts. All of those, you run them in a blast directory, in a blast project directory. So it's creating our blast project, Cudos Blast project. And that's almost done. So okay, so I'm going to see okay, I'm already there. So I'm going to open it in VS Code. So, okay, so it's opening. And let me hide this for now. I want to increase my, I'm going to zoom out so that you can see very well. Okay. I hope this is legible enough. If you can't see very well, you might tell me to increase my the size. Let me increase once more. Okay. So the first thing is, there's no need to run npm install, but the first thing is, let me just show you the directory, what it looks like. So we have the smart contracts inside the contracts folder. We have the node modules and the scripts here. The scripts are how we interact with our Blast node. Sorry, our Cudos node, our blockchain node. Then we have the tests here. We can test our smart contracts using the JavaScript file here. And this is an important file. It contains, everything is important, but this file contains our Blast configuration. And remember, this is an intro, so that I wouldn't spend too much time, but then those are the things you need to know. So the first thing I would like to do is to compile our smart contract. Okay, let me start the node. And to do that, you remember I talked about Docker. So Docker handles the Cudos node, starting the Cudos node, testing, and all of that. So Cudos Blast uses Docker, and that abstracts away the need for you to download and run your own Cudos, to install and run your own Cudos node. Cudos Blast handles all of that using Docker. So to start a Cudos node, I'm going to run blast node start, and that starts our local node. So I think it's going to take some time, a little bit of time. And if we check, you'd see that, let me check the containers, the images. So it's in use. So our node has now started. So, after that, I'm going to compile a smart contract. I'm going to compile the smart contracts we have here. I'm waiting for it to write onto the console node started. So please hold on for me. Yeah, our node is ready. And to check, sometimes you might want to check the status of your node. So you run the command blast node status. So that's going to show if we have any node running. So it says our node is online. And this is the ID. So to compile our smart contract, I'm going to run the command blast compile. What this command does is that it compiles the contracts we have under the contracts directory. So if you want to add any contracts or you want to remove contracts, you come here, and once you run the blast compile, it's going to look at this directory and run the and compile the smart contracts there. So the output of the compilation process is that it creates an artifact directory that contains our optimized WebAssembly file. And each WebAssembly file is going to be named after the contract. So the first one is alpha, the second one is beta. So we should be expecting alpha.wasm as well as beta.wasm. So it's optimizing the smart contract. Yeah, so that's done. Let's check. Yeah, we have them here. Okay, so after compiling our smart contract, we can now deploy the smart contract. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that in the scripts, we have files, and you can add your own script as well. If you check the Cudos Blast repository here, you're going to see some explanations on what you can do with the Cudos Blast library. So you can create your own custom scripts. But for now, let's look at the deploy. So the deploy script is responsible for deploying our smart contract, the compiled smart contract. And you would see that we've passed in the name alpha. That's because we want to deploy alpha contract. If we wanted beta, we would have written beta here. And so I'm going to now run blast. So this is going to deploy the smart contract onto our local node. Yeah, so the smart contract has been deployed here. We can copy the address. And the interact script is how we can interact with our smart contracts. So if you write your own smart contracts after deployment, you can interact with them using the deploy script or whatever script you write. Let me remove this and put the address. So I'm going to save, and using the same command but with a different script, I'm going to run blast run scripts interact. So the command is blast run, but the location is scripts interact. .js. So the first thing, this is a counter smart contract. So the first thing is it initializes our smart contract. Once the smart contract gets deployed here, just an overview of what is happening. So once the smart contract gets deployed, the deployment that we did earlier initializes the smart contract. And the first thing we do is we are querying the smart contract. We are reading from the smart contract state, the initial count. Then we increment the smart contract here on line 11. No. We increment the smart contract here by running await contract.execute, passing in this object. And we are logging the result. So the result is this is the result of the command. And thirdly, we're reading the smart contract data by running by calling on await contract.query method, passing in this object that was defined here. So this is a very brief overview. So we're going to get more in depth, and as the course goes on, we're going to look at all of this more in more details. So this is an overview. And after this is the result of the third command or the third call, which is querying the smart contract storage. So that's all from me. I'm now going to pass the mic back to, I'm going to pass it to Yom, and Yom is going to give us a detailed explanation on the second method of interacting with the second approach to deploying or creating your smart contract on Cudos blockchain. So Yom, over to you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for that one, Aisha. I can't yet hear you, Antrix. But yeah, so I know that with some of the technical difficulties we've been having, some of this may have been a little bit more difficult to follow just from that little hiccup right at the beginning where it sort of jumped in part way through, especially if you're watching this after the fact. But again, feel free to reach out on Discord if you have any questions as well. And we're more than happy to help you every step of the way. But yeah, Antrix also knows some additional things in terms of where you can use it on M1 Mac, which Cudos Blast does work for both M1 and general x86, but sometimes M1 will be a little bit finicky. So that's why we're showing you both approaches, and so Antrix will show you the other approach now. And yeah, you can also choose what you prefer between those two. So feel free to choose what you think fits you best, and we're happy to help support you no matter which one you choose. We're also keen to keep things getting more threshed out with the Cudos Blast tool. We are upgrading it all the time, and so we're going to have a better and better experience with Cudos Blast and iron out any of those M1 issues. But yeah, Antrix, I still can't yet hear you. Still not. I can see you. I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear anything just yet. Okay, a quick little rejoin from Antrix here. But yeah, just again, reach out in either the show code or in the Cudos Discord. More than happy to help on that side there. Also, while we wait for Antrix, I can tell you a little bit more about what you're going to see in the rest of the program. So what you have been seeing in terms of, yeah, it does sound like we can hear you, Antrix. But yeah, what we have been showing you, what Aisha has been showing you is some of the code around the contract and their interactions. So That's useful in terms of the setup of the full environment, but we are also going to help you to better understand how those contracts interact, how to write the contracts themselves, coming in the next episode as well. So if anything hasn't made sense yet, stick around, especially for that next session, which is Thursday next week, a week from today. But yeah, over to you, Antrix. Thanks
Hi.
for this.
Yeah. So I'm just going to be going forward with Kudos Noted, which is so I'll talk a bit about. First, I'll share my screen. Let me share my entire screen. Yeah. So I'll talk a bit about what I'm Kudos Noted, which is the Kudos blockchain node. So it's basically it's a binary that is given to you by Kudos. You can visit this GitHub repository. Um, this right here is a link to the Kudos node source code. You can download it. Now, the way Kudos works, the node works is it acts as a client and it acts as a server. So you can use the Kudos node in order to run your own local validator node or a blockchain node where you can develop, or you can use this as a client to connect to an RPC, which is a remote node hosted somewhere else. So you'll have some documentation here onto how to actually use it. But long story short, you first go ahead and clone it. So I've already installed it on my system. So if I start a new session, the way you get started with Kudos Node is um, I'll create a new directory. You clone it. You clone the Kudos node, and once you clone the Kudos node, you you then go ahead and run make. So in order to run make, you need to have two things installed. You need to have a few things installed. You need to have Go on your system. Go should be configured properly. It should be up and running. And apart from that, you should also have make, which is the build system used by Kudos Noted. If you have both of those things set up, apart from the other dependencies that it would warn you about, if you don't, you should be good to go. Just hit make and it'll make the entire binary. For me, it's already done. Now, if you're following this along on any system, if you're following it on M1, as I'm working with it right now, you may face an error that's going to tell you something related to. 1 second. Give me a second. Yeah, you may face an error about how some sort of a path is not configured. So that's a common error that you may face. So if you face such an error, I'll screenshot again. Sorry. Yeah. So if you face an error while installing Kudos Noded, then what you can do is you can go ahead. I'll show you. So you go to your make file, and approximately in the 17th line, you need to change something here, right? You need to add a comma over here. So let me just show that to you. If I run make right now, it's going to download all the necessary libraries. It should take a moment. Once it finishes installing, it'll be accessible in your binary should be accessible in the Go path, which is the Go path, which is an environment variable set by Go, or you have to manually set it if Go has not set it for you. Apart from that, while it's installing, if you have already installed Kudos Node, then you should be able to do this and verify your installation. Once you do that, you'll see a bunch of available commands. Now, the Kudos Noted binary may seem a bit overwhelming at first, considering the available commands and all the functionality that it has. But really, Kudos Noted allows you to do whatever you want with the Kudos blockchain. It is your gateway to the blockchain and dealing with the blockchain. So for anything that the blockchain can do and that you want to do with the blockchain, you can do that with Kudos Noded. So that's why there's a lot of functionality here. But you need to understand a few things only. You need to understand deployment with Kudos Noded. Deploying a smart contract, you need to understand how to interact with the smart contract. Apart from that, how to deal with accounts and keys. As you can see, I got this error. This is an error that you may face. This is a recent error that has been happening. In order to fix it, you simply come here on line 17, right here. I think we add a comma here. Yeah, we add a comma here, and that should fix it. Um, 1 second. Anyway, while that's installing, so you need to understand deployment, dealing with accounts and keys. So I have a contract here already set up. So this is the Kudos name service contract that you can get from this link right here. You can also clone it and you'll be able to follow along. So if you want to follow along, just clone the library and you can go ahead with this. So we start off. So deployment with Kudos Noded, first of all, is an involved process. You have to deal with a number of large commands and understand those commands as well. So there's also, in the same repository, there's also a helpful file called instructions.md, which show you the steps to deploy the binary that is there with the contract itself. So before starting off, we go ahead and compile the entire contract. So in Kudos Blast, we run blast compile, right? Instead, with the name service contract, when we're dealing with Kudos Noded, we do this. So this command, you may not understand completely, it's fine. Essentially, we're just telling Docker, you need to have Docker installed. My Docker is installed and up and running. You need to run Docker and you need to run this container, which is the Rust optimizer container of this version. The version needs to be the same. When you run this, if this Docker image is not already installed, then it's going to pull that Docker image, or it's going to install it, download it and install it, and it's then going to run it. So if I just hit enter, wait, sorry. If you are on an ARM device like me, you need to run ARM64. This command is only for Intel x86. ARM64 is the one for ARM devices, which is the one I have. Now it's going to compile, and as you can see, it has compiled it. So instead of blast compile, we do this. Now the difference between blast compile and this is that what Kudos Blast does is it uses a different command. Underneath the hood, it also uses Docker only. It uses the same optimizer, but it uses a different command. It uses workspace optimizer instead of Rust optimizer. The difference is slight. The difference comes from the fact that Rust optimizer optimizes a single contract. So you have a single contract, you have a single contract entry point. But as you saw in Kudos Blast, there are two different contracts. One is alpha and the other is beta. So workspace is used for multi-contract compilation. So in workspace, you use it when you have multiple contracts. Since we have a single contract in this, we're using Rust optimizer, but there's no reason why you can't use workspace. Anyway, as you can see, this installed. There's a bunch of deprecation warnings, but Kudos Node is installed. So again, to use it, it's simple. The solution is here. You clone it, and if you face this error, you just use that solution. Apart from that, let's go ahead with the deployment. So as you'll see in this instructions.md, we start off by uploading the WASM binary on the blockchain. Now, before we even get started with that, in order to deploy your smart contract, you need to create an account, or you need to have an address on the blockchain. The way you do that is, you say Kudos Noded Kudos hyphen noded. You then go ahead, you say add keys add, and then you give a name. So you can give any name. Keys add user. Once you do it, it gives you a standard, generates Cosmos SDK address for you. An address includes your name. It includes a bunch of other meta fields like your name, type. It includes your mnemonic, public key, private key, all those things. Since this is a local user, it's fine if I show the private key and public key. But if you have something on the mainnet, don't show your public and private key. Be safe. Apart from that, now I have my own user here. So what I can do is I can go ahead and query that. So you should be able to do query account, and you can use this address. Yeah, 1 second. You can copy this node and this ID. Keys list. Yeah, sorry. So if you want to see all the different accounts that you have, you can go ahead and hit Kudos noded keys list. This command shows you all the local keys that you have. So I have user, owner, Bob, Alice, all of them. Apart from that, that's how you have users. Now, if you actually want to, in order to deploy it, um, you need to have some funds in your account. So specifically, like the one which I have a few Kudos tokens. So if you want to actually go ahead and deploy a contract, you'd need some funds, and you can get those funds from the Kudos faucet, which it's in the dev resources. Um, it's on Big Dipper, I think. And then you can also ask me or Oli in the Discord server to get you some funds. We can send you some funds. That also works. Um, Apart from that, once you've done those two things, once you've created an account, you've got some funds in your account, you should be good to go. You should be able to check your funds um, through the query commands. 1 second. Query auth bank admin account. One second. So, by the way, this node, this right here is um, it's the testnet RPC node. So it's a remote testnet node that's hosted. So you can use this in order to. We're gonna show you the usage for that node. Anyway, as you can see, yeah. So like this owner address that I have, you can use this command kudos noded query account, followed by your address, followed by the node, and you can get the details about your account. You should also be able to do the same with bank, which shows you the balances per address. So if I do bank balances, I'll just copy this address. You should be able to do this, and this shows you the bank balances. Copying this node. and it shows you the amount of kudos tokens that you have, which is the denomination under kudos. I have this many, so I can go ahead with so once you've verified all of this, once you've gotten enough funds, you can verify the funds with this command. We can go ahead and get ready for deployment. So the first thing that we do, so as I said, it's an involved process. It's a 5-step process. Actually, it's really just a 3-step process. The other 2 are just executing and doing the interactions. So the first step is simple. We have a WASM binary, which is the compiled result that we have. It's the same that you get from Cudos Blast, or you do it manually. It's the same command. Once you have the binary, you then go ahead and upload that WASM binary on the blockchain. You literally take it and you put it on the blockchain. To do that, it's a standard command. It works throughout Cosmos blockchains. So give me a second. So you also you can see your compiled binary in the artifacts folder. This right here is the compiled binary. So I'll go ahead and I'll copy part of this. I'll paste in my binary. I'll explain this command in just a second. Dash dash from owner. Okay, so it worked successfully. For verification, I can just show you. Okay, wait, no. Insufficient funds. Looks like I'm out of money. I had a different.
If you want to send me your Cudos One address, I can send you some across now.
Yeah. Didn't know this day would come. Seems I was short of. I've sent it here. Apart from that, I think I was dealing with doing some import and export with the blockchain. So that's a bummer. Anyway, I'll explain this command. So what you're doing is essentially, if you understand Bash, you'll know that you basically what you're doing is you're creating a variable called res, which is result, stands for result, and you're storing the result of this command, the output of this inside this res. Pretty simple. Now this command itself is I'll break it down piece by piece. So kudos noded is the root command. It's the CLI that we are running. TX stands for transaction. It basically transaction in Cosmos just means anytime you're doing some sort of a state change, or you're doing something on the blockchain that is changing the state of the blockchain, the data on the blockchain. So that's transaction. And since we're uploading something to the blockchain, we're definitely doing a state change. So we have you doing a transaction. Then we have WASM, which is the module. Modules in CosmWasm and Cosmos are basically parts of a blockchain. So WASM is one part of the blockchain. We're dealing with that module. And then inside WASM, we're doing the store command, which is a sub command from the WASM what do we say, module. So if I go ahead and type kudos noded tx wasm, you'll see that it has transaction subcommands, all of these transaction subcommands. We'll see a few of them like store and instantiate and execute. Anyway, this is store. Then store requires a file, which is the wasm binary. Once you do that, you require the from. So which address are you doing this from? Here you put in your name or the address. I've put in the name in this case. And then you have your node, and then you have the chain ID. A chain ID is the ID of which chain is running on that node. So in Cosmos, nodes have multiple chains, and each chain has its own chain ID. This testnet, which is hosted by Kudos for you, so that you can easily use it, has the Kudos testnet public 3 as its chain ID, which is publicly available. You don't need to remember all this. It's part of the it's all here in steps to deploy. It's already put in there for you. Then these last commands are to do with gas. It's recommended that you don't change them because depending on contract they may vary, but the Kudos name service contract is pretty heavy in itself, so these are fine enough, these parameters. and then you do keyring backend, which is the type of keyring that's used. There's two different types. There's file and there's OS. You have to use OS because you're dealing with an RPC node, so you have to put OS there. And dash y is just stands for dash yes, that yeah, we need to do it. So if I, for example, if I do this, wait, no, never mind. This has to be with owner. So if I just remove the dash y command, it's just gonna ask me to prompt me for whether or not to go forward, and I can just do. So dash y just skips that. Um, anyway, apart from that,
You should have a little more funds there, hopefully.
let's see. So again, we can use the bank query, and yeah, I think it's more. So if you're lucky enough, this would work. As you can see, it worked. You may not understand all of this, but yeah, this is the verbose output that you get when it works. Let's follow this. So now that we've done it, we need to get a code ID. So from all of this junk, you can't just filter out and get a specific code ID, because to go forward, you actually need to go ahead and instantiate the contract, which requires what's called a code ID, which is the ID of the code that you've uploaded on the blockchain. Now, in our case, I think it's visible here. It's 66, but anyway, you may not see it initially. So we will just use this small command. It uses JQ, which is JSON query command. You can install it. Just search online JQ. What it does is it goes through all of the entire verbose output, and it gets the code ID, and it saves it in this variable. As you can see, it's 66. This is recommended because this way you'll just have that and you can use it whenever you want. Once that's done, we are on the last step of the deployment, and after that we'll have a contract ready to use. So now we just have to instantiate it. So now that so all of these steps may seem unlogical at first. Oh wait, this needs to be like this. What I did here was just create an empty variable called init. I'll show you why it's useful right now. So the last step to deployment is running this command, which is Cudos CosmWasm instantiate. So as we were talking about the steps, once we upload the Wasm binary, that's not the end of the road. Once after uploading, we also need to instantiate it. We need to it's similar to like the main function. It's similar to like a class. If you're familiar with the classes in object-oriented programming, once we create the class, we've really only created the structure, what it looks like. To use it, we need to instantiate an instance. We need to create an instance of it and instantiate it. Similarly, here we are just creating an instance of it, of the contract itself on the blockchain. So you can create multiple instances of the same blockchain. Sorry. So what this command does is instantiate it. We pass in the code ID which we have. Now this is what it takes. It takes an init. This init right here, which is essentially just an empty JavaScript object, JSON object. This init is basically a parameter, arguments that you give to your smart contract at the time of instantiating. So when you have a class, like let's say a class of dog, you'll probably give it some parameters like name, which would be Tom, and you'd give it some breed, which would be golden retriever, right? So you'd do something like this. So similarly, you're instantiating your dog, and you're giving them name and breed. Similarly, here we're really instantiating a contract, and we're passing the arguments or the parameters to the contract, similar to how you would do with a class or something. So again you need a from here, because since it's a state change, we need to give the name or the address of the person who's responsible so that they can pay up all the gas fees. Then we know what node and chain ID does: gas auto, gas prices. This label just stands for what's the label, because as I said, you can have multiple instances. You need to label each instance so that Cudos or Cosmos knows which instance running. We can run it. Okay, wait 1 second. I think this is a new one. Dash dash no admin, dash dash no admin. I think we need to pass it. Yeah, we need to pass dash dash no admin. That is an amendment that I'll have to make. So we run this. Don't worry about the command, remembering the same command. It's all here. Once we do that, we get all this command, all of these output, which is again unnecessary. All we need out of this is the contract address. So we've deployed it. That's the end of the road for deployment. After doing that, you just need to get the contract address by running this command, searching through all this verbose, and this is the contract address. So similar to when you deploy your contract on Ethereum or other EVM compatible blockchains, you get an address, which is where your contract lives on the blockchain. You'll get an address here as well, and this is the address for us. So that was deploying it on the blockchain. We haven't covered running it. Executing something on the blockchain, it's not that difficult. I can cover it if we have time. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was deploying it. Deploying it on the Cudos blockchain. It's an involved process. But this is essentially what Cudos Blast and other things do. This is the gateway, the primary thing that's used by the blockchains as well. I'll hand it over to Wally now.
Yeah, no, nice one, Antrix. Yeah, so we've seen a lot there today in terms of different ways of deploying on the Cudos blockchain. Ultimately, a lot of this did look pretty technical and started to look a little bit complex when some unpretty printed JSON arrives on the screen. But fear not, we will keep holding your hand and helping you through any of these sections as well. So. And also, yeah, we did also mention some certain things around gas and accounts. So I'll just quickly mention about blockchains in general. And so with them, in order to actually perform transactions on a decentralized distributed network of computers, you do need to pay for that processing power. And so that's where that term gas comes in. And so Cudos, we saw that I sent Antrix a few more Cudos there in order for him to pay for the gas fees of running it on our testnet blockchain. And so when he had enough gas fees in his or the crypto that the Cudos platform uses, he was then able to actually run those interactions, run that deployment of the smart contract code. But basically, we're throwing you in the deep end with a lot of these beginning things in terms of how blockchains work, how the setup works, so that we can then take it step by step with the actual deployment for your own contracts from the next session onwards as well. But yeah, so we did see that there are a lot of sort of technicalities on that front. So things like the actual transactions on the network, so of which the deployment transaction and the initialized transaction are one, and the different method calls you can have. So yeah, anything on the blockchain does require gas, so we will also be showing you step by step some more around that in the later sessions, including execution of contracts themselves. So actually interacting with them once they are uploaded to the blockchain. But yeah, basically you've got this distributed network running code for you, and all of the systems in that network agree that your code is true, and the interactions of that code is true. And so that's where you're maintaining this state across many different systems there. But yeah, so we did see some cool stuff today. But as always, if you're struggling with any of the process, feel free to reach out on Discord. We'll get some more developer resources over to you. I will also just get that Linktree link over to you again as well, because that has some a good go-to spot that points to some various resources. Obviously, the most important one being the Cudos docs themselves, which are available at docs.cudos.org, which you can find a lot of the process as well. But yeah, we saw two different methods to actually interacting with the Cudos blockchain, and some of those interactions include deploying smart contracts and actually initializing those smart contracts using our different tools, Cudos Blast and the core Cudos node, which Cudos Blast is a wrapper of, which we use the Cudos Node D CLI for. But yeah, so ultimately, this is an interesting journey into a new space, into Web3 for a lot of you here, and so a lot of the tech that we're dealing with now is incredibly new, and it's being worked on in terms of the developer experience all the time. And so because it's all so new, we are absolutely here to help 100%. So as I keep saying, feel free to reach out in Discord for any additional information. And yeah, based on your system, you can go with either of the approaches we saw today. For next week, we're going to have a look at actually seeing the structure of a CosmWasm contract in terms of the different messages and state that we will see in terms of how a smart contract is actually structured. This will also show you how NFTs work, which are a type of contract as well. And so NFTs are going to be quite an exciting part of this, and can be used for a lot of interesting applications. And so yeah, we'll be seeing some cool stuff around them as part of this as well. But yeah, ultimately we will give you a taster of lots of different things in the coming weeks, and it's going to be a great program for any of you who are interested in really getting into this world of Web3 and world of smart contract deployment development in within the Cosmos ecosystem, within the Rust ecosystem, and within the broader ecosystem of Web3 itself. So yeah, we're really keen to have you along for the rest of the journey, and we're going to be seeing a bunch of cool stuff and helping you every step of the way. So I keep saying it. Reach out in Discord. We're there to help. We are all three of us will be around to answer any of those questions that pop up in either the show code Discord or in the Cudos Discord. You should be able to see the various channels there, and we will get you well on your way. Some other resources. So I did mention at the beginning of the call, but since we got cut off there, I will just say it again. Have a look at the Rust book. I will grab mine here. Have a look at the Rust book. You don't need the hard copy. It's for free online. I think it's rustlang.org, but that's also available in the dev resources there, that Linktree link there too. And particularly have a look at the first 4 chapters. Chapter 4 is a little bit, it shows a lot of the difference of how Rust may play with ownership of variable state across scope. And that's where things in Rust are a little bit different to the other languages you may have seen. But when you start to understand it, I think you'll think it's pretty cool. We will also get a list of useful VS Code extensions to you. There are some useful things that help with building in Rust and building in the Cosmos ecosystem. Particularly one for Rust is the Rust-Analyzer plugin, and for the Cosmos ecosystem is CosmWasm. So you can have a look at those 2 extensions, but we'll get you a list of those into the Discord channel as well. But yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. Sorry for running over time. Hopefully those of you who are watching watching asynchronously, don't mind that too much as well. But it's been great to be here with my fellows Antrix and Aisha as well. So yeah, again, I keep stressing it. Reach out in Discord. We're there to help, and we will take you every step of the way. But yeah, so Antrix has also posted a link to the VS Code Marketplace for CosmWasm there as well. And the Rust-Analyzer one is pretty easy to find just by searching. Very popular one across the broader Rust ecosystem. Again, I'm sorry for running over time here, but I think we covered a lot of cool stuff, and we're here to help you every step of the way. But we will catch you on a week from today, and we will see you for that session there. And hopefully I will have ironed out my technical difficulties from that session on. Thanks so much for sticking with us, and we will see you then. Thanks all. Goodbye.